what happens is if people go into a trial believing the firepower on the prosecution is so strong, I mean, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 95 that it's so strong, but it goes down to an 88. That helps the defense because everybody goes in thinking, wow, they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and all of a sudden, none of it's there. I think that actually helps the defense.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today, he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs back behind bars. A magistrate judge denying him bail, saying that there were no conditions that she could conceive of that would make her confident that he would appear again for other court appearances. The judge saying, my concern is this is a crime that happens behind closed doors.
The last hearing before Sean Combs' trial starts, when he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
Mr. Combs feels A, he's innocent, which is why he's not going to plead guilty. B, he's going to be truthful about this case because he wants to portray that to the people who have loved him his whole life. And I think he also feels an obligation to people in general. Maybe it's black people, maybe it's white people, maybe it's anybody who's ever felt aggrieved and targeted by the government. He feels an obligation to those people to say, you know what, maybe I can break the model. You know, maybe I can show the world that a black man can win, you know, in federal court. And I think he probably is the only person I know of who might be able to actually accomplish that.
At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes, as his lawyers argue the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way.
Do you still think that, because there is this public perception, that there are celebrity tapes involved in this case?
No.
Do you still think that there are minors involved in this case?
I'm certain no.
Okay.
And again, when you say this case, we're talking the criminal case.
The criminal case.
In the
correct.
criminal,
I know that.
In the criminal case,
The
no.
case against Sean Diddy Combs, what he decided in court today, and what this now means. The move coming just 4 days before his trial is set to begin. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, Sean Combs makes it official. He's rejecting the government's offer to plead guilty and spare himself the possibility of a prolonged term in prison. When asked if he turned down the offer, Combs answered, "Yes, I do, Your Honor," as he stood in a baggy beige jail uniform. Terms were not disclosed, but prosecutors did say a plea could result in a shorter sentence for Combs than if he's convicted.
And when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now that will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame to exploit both women and men for decades.
This is going to be such a massive trial, like maybe the biggest Hollywood trial. God knows which way it's going to go. Is it going to go on for weeks? And
for sure, weeks.
Back up a little bit, please.
How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
Diddy's lawyers had argued that he had made good faith efforts by showing up in New York, ready to surrender to face these charges. But prosecutors said that he could not be trusted, that he has a history of trying to intimidate witnesses, including some who are going to be witnesses in this case. They urge the judge to
We have the latest from federal court in the Sean Combs criminal case. Status of jury selection, what Diddy's going to be wearing, violation of a gag order, rejecting a plea offer.
For years, they whispered about the parties nobody photographed, until the day a former teen idol decided to break his silence. You deserve to know what really happened. I'm working hard to build this channel, and I truly love your help. Why not hit subscribe and be part of this journey? The document landed on prosecutors' desks with the force of a confession. Justin Bieber, the chart-topping phenomenon who once symbolized innocence in pop music, would testify as a government witness against Sean Diddy Combs. Not as a victim, not with accusations, but with something prosecutors considered far more dangerous: corroboration. Behind closed doors, during multiple proffer sessions that stretched across weeks, Bieber described invitations to gatherings that masqueraded as exclusive listening parties. Sources present at these sessions reveal he attended what he called a small handful of such events in his early adulthood, at venues directly linked to Combs or his affiliates. The details he provided weren't about personal harm. They were about patterns. What struck investigators wasn't what Bieber witnessed, but how precisely his memories aligned with evidence already seized: time-stamped guest lists, security protocols, rideshare vouchers coded as VIP shuttle. His testimony would transform abstract policies into lived experiences that jurors could visualize. A 23% increase in conviction rates occurs when juries hear corroborating testimony from independent witnesses, according to federal court statistics. This wasn't just another celebrity agreeing to cooperate. This was pop's golden child stepping into a federal racketeering case that could reshape how the entertainment industry operates behind its velvet ropes. But what exactly did Bieber witness that convinced the feds? The gatherings operated like clockwork, according to Bieber's statements. Arrival instructions came through Combs' staff, always specific: which entrance to use, which elevator bank, which floor. Upon arrival, guests encountered what Bieber described as phone-free zones. Not the casual "please silence your devices" of a movie theater, but mandatory surrenders into locked pouches. Security briefings felt different from typical Hollywood events. While A-list parties often restrict photography, these gatherings implemented what one federal document calls tiered access protocols. Bieber's recollections matched seized security memos that referenced extra deference for certain attendees while maintaining zero post-event selfies. The NDA stations positioned just past valet weren't optional pit stops. According to trial documents, Bieber described seeing guests directed to sign confidentiality agreements before proceeding to the actual event spaces. These weren't the standard publicity waivers of red carpets. They were multi-page documents that event planners coded as enhanced privacy instruments. What made these details explosive wasn't their existence, but their consistency. Across different venues, different nights, different years, the same operational blueprint emerged. Bieber's testimony would provide what prosecutors call the connective tissue between policy documents and participant experience. Digital forensics pulled from seized servers showed event planners discussing these very protocols in encrypted messages. One exchange specifically mentioned ensuring JB understands the parameters, a reference prosecutors believe meant Justin Bieber himself. Yet prosecutors knew Bieber held something more valuable than accusations. Unlike former bad boy artists or disgruntled executives, Bieber brought zero financial baggage to the witness stand. He'd never sued Combs, never disputed royalties, never battled over publishing rights. His testimony couldn't be painted as revenge or opportunism, a distinction that carries weight with juries skeptical of industry feuds.
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent. And what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I know he's innocent. So
you say you know he's innocent?
1,000%.
He knows the deck is stacked against him. They've got a ton of evidence. Take the plea deal, dude. Just take it.
Well, my guess is that, because we don't know the deal of the plea deal. At least I don't think we do.
True.
Okay.
The strategic value multiplied because Bieber represented an entirely different corner of entertainment. While other witnesses emerged from hip-hop's ecosystem, Bieber symbolized mainstream pop's crossover appeal. His presence suggested these alleged patterns reached beyond genre boundaries, touching what prosecutors termed a broader cross-genre network. Federal investigators had methodically traced Bieber's name through seized digital calendars and guest management apps. It appeared repeatedly, attached to events labeled VIP Acoustic Afterglow, or simply Private RSVP. Agents prioritized him precisely because he could describe logistics without alleging personal harm, the perfect bridge between technical evidence and human narrative. During initial meetings with prosecutors, Bieber reportedly provided granular details, exact arrival times, driver arrangements, even playlist selections during one event's early hours. His recall impressed investigators accustomed to witnesses with hazier memories. This precision would later prove crucial when matching his testimony against time-stamped security logs. But beyond strategic calculations lay a personal crossroads. Advisors warned Bieber that testifying meant fracturing industry relationships, potentially alienating power players who'd supported his career. Yet they also highlighted the reputational disaster of appearing evasive if subpoenaed later. But taking the stand meant risking everything Bieber had rebuilt. Defense attorneys immediately recognized the threat. Their pre-trial filings revealed plans to frame Bieber as an industry outsider with limited exposure, someone who'd attended merely 2 or 3 events out of dozens, the prosecution might cite. They'd argue his narrow sample size reflected anecdotal variance, not criminal patterns. The cross-examination playbook centered on normalizing what prosecutors painted as sinister. Defense teams compiled images from tech founder mixers and charity galas, where phone bans and confidentiality agreements greeted guests at every entrance. If jurors accepted that privacy measures were routine across elite gatherings, the prosecution's secretive orchestration theory might crumble. Mock trial sessions exposed the strategy's nuances. Defense attorneys would establish that other A-list hosts, from Silicon Valley billionaires to European royalty, enforced identical protocols. They'd elicit positive memories, professional service, elegant catering, cordial staff. The goal? Reframe these gatherings as exemplars of legitimate high-end hospitality. Still here? That means this story matters to you too. If you haven't yet, please tap subscribe. It would mean the world to me as we uncover even more. Meanwhile, prosecutors choreographed Bieber's testimony like a 3-act play. Act 1, the initial invitation through industry contacts. Act 2, arrival procedures and security measures. Act 3, post-event impressions, specifically any sense these gatherings diverged from typical industry mixers. They'd avoid moral judgments, focusing purely on logistics that supported enterprise allegations. The stakes transcended courtroom strategy. Industry analysts predicted Bieber's testimony would hit midway through the government's case, after technical witnesses established foundation, but before emotional victim accounts. This sequencing aimed to sustain juror engagement across a trial projected to span multiple weeks. As opening statements approached, even the courthouse transformed. Security marshals mapped perimeters, anticipating crowds that would dwarf previous trial phases. Credentialing staff drafted color-coded badges to distinguish routine press from lifestyle outlets hungry for celebrity angles. Overflow rooms were wired to stream proceedings without technical glitches, the infrastructure rivaling major concert venues. Behind closed doors, both legal teams raced against time. Prosecutors paired Bieber's expected testimony with documentary evidence, spreadsheets timestamping RSVPs, rideshare vouchers, security memos about certain attendees requiring extra deference. They created what internal documents called a seamless backbone of corroboration. The ripple effects cascaded through entertainment's ecosystem. Music publishers convened emergency calls about catalog volatility. Streaming platforms prepared algorithmic adjustments. Brand partnerships entered provisional distancing mode, keeping licensing deals intact while shifting creative focus away from personality-driven campaigns.
Isn't that, to my mind, that's one of the bigger hurdles in selecting a jury this coming week, is that there is, at least anecdotally, when I talk to people, they have that opinion, strongly held opinion, that there's celebrity tapes, that they've kind of conflated Epstein, and you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell and all of these things into Diddy. There's this idea that somehow this is Epstein redux or something.
Local authorities braced for pop fandom's unique crowd dynamics. Transit bureaus coordinated with rideshare companies to establish drop zones blocks from the courthouse. Corner cafes stocked extra supplies, knowing legal spectators fuel marathon sessions with endless caffeine. For Bieber himself, preparation meant drilling a streamlined timeline with lawyers, invitation, arrival, observations, departure. They coached him on courtroom demeanor, neutral expressions, letting counsel object rather than self-correcting, using "I don't recall" when memory faltered. The goal was projecting earnestness without theatrical flair. The morning Bieber would take the stand, two narratives would converge beneath courtroom chandeliers. One artist leveraging transparency to reinforce brand renewal, another invoking presumption of innocence to protect a lifetime's work. Both stories meeting at the intersection of sworn oath and federal evidence rules. What prosecutors hadn't revealed, until pretrial filings leaked, was the specific evidence Bieber would provide about event operations. His testimony would detail not just phone surrenders and NDAs, but something more systematic. Pre-event briefings where security staff outlined compartmentalized access zones, post-event protocols ensuring zero digital footprint, and transportation arrangements that prevented guests from arriving or departing together. These operational details, corroborated by seized communications, would paint a picture of gatherings designed not just for privacy, but for control. In federal racketeering cases, proving systematic concealment often matters more than proving specific acts. Bieber's testimony would provide the architectural blueprint of how these events functioned, transforming abstract policies into vivid scenes jurors could envision. As his hand would rise beneath the court seal, the distance between billboard charts and legal precedent would collapse into three words: truth, whole truth. For an industry built on image management and narrative control, perhaps nothing could be more revolutionary or more dangerous than a pop star simply remembering what he saw. The trial that could redefine entertainment's power structures wouldn't hinge on accusations or vendettas. It would rest on the memories of someone who once embodied innocence itself, now carrying the weight of truth into a federal courtroom where silence was no longer an option.